The hours many people are spending in virtual meetings has some video conference users opting to have cosmetic procedures or even plastic surgery to enhance their physical appearance on camera.
When you take a still photo, you have an opportunity to get your best angle, to get the best lighting. When you're on Zoom, it is what it is. You can only do so much.
Others working remotely during the pandemic, like business communication professor and single mom Amy Weisner, say video conferencing all day is just draining, both physically and mentally.
In this pandemic-driven Zoom environment, the level of exhaustion is like nothing I've ever experienced.
Yeah, I have no idea what you said. The baby was crying the entire time.
The most difficult thing about being on Zoom all the time is scheduling back-to-back meetings and teaching nonstop and not having a break.
That exhaustion Weisner and others are experiencing is what Stanford University researchers call Zoom fatigue.
You see yourself, and that draws your attention to how you're presenting yourself, and that is psychologically and emotionally taxing.
Stanford University researchers identified 4 consequences of prolonged video chats that contribute to Zoom fatigue: the cognitive load on a person's brain from interpreting cues and gestures from others, reduced mobility from sitting in front of a computer screen all day, excessive amounts of close-up eye contact with others, and continuously seeing your own image on camera. A follow-up study found that, like Amy Weisner, women were more than twice as likely to experience high levels of Zoom fatigue compared to men.
The question is why?
Subsequently, researchers from Stanford and Michigan State University found another troubling trend with women who use video conferencing.
Women reported more Zoom fatigue, and facial dissatisfaction clearly plays a role. If you are a woman, you're more likely to have higher facial dissatisfaction. And if you have that higher facial dissatisfaction, you are more likely to report Zoom fatigue.
They're looking at themselves in these Zoom cameras and picking out every little thing that they don't like, whether it's puffiness in their eyes, the number 11s, the horizontal forehead lines, the looseness of their neck.
A lot of new men were coming in having facelifts and things for their neck. The majority, however, were women that were coming in similar things.
The shift toward remote work and socialization forced people to confront their own image for hours on end every day in a way that was never before seen in our society and frankly unnatural.
A survey of 134 dermatology specialists by researchers at Harvard Medical School found that cosmetic procedure consultations increased by 57% during the pandemic, with 86% of providers saying that appearance on video conferencing calls was listed by patients as a reason, something they've termed Zoom dysmorphia.
Dermatologists, my friends and colleagues in my field, felt that was surprising and disproportionate given the circumstances that we were in.
I wanted to have things done probably in the first couple months when I realized this was going to be our new normal, but I had to wait for the offices to open and they were flooded. So I knew I was on the same path as many others.
They were people that in many cases were confident individuals that suddenly seemed to have this disproportionate sense of a negative appearance and sensitivity to it.
So I started looking into procedures like filler under my eyes, which I had never done before, and doing this procedure which minimizes the fat underneath your chin and jawline.
There's another aspect of video conference technology that could be contributing to facial dissatisfaction.
What we found in continuing to research these aspects in the technology front-facing cameras is that the front-facing cameras on our laptops and our smartphones actually distort images more than classical cameras. And in addition to this, we interact with those devices at a closer range than photographs are classically taken. It's more like looking in a funhouse mirror because the image is distorted.
Some ways to decrease mirror anxiety when on video conference calls include using the Hide Self-View button, positioning your camera further away, and turning your camera off to give yourself a break. But dermatologists and plastic surgeons don't expect the trend of increased cosmetic consultations to wane anytime soon.
I think it will continue. And I think that when you look, particularly if you look at the younger patients and the younger generation, they're certainly all into it.
Virtual meetings are likely here to stay, as the cost savings and convenience of video conferencing has many offices moving toward a hybrid office and remote working environment. And some researchers think one way to alleviate issues like Zoom fatigue and dysmorphia in the future could be to use avatars in virtual meetings, a tool some tech companies are developing.
Imagine that you could just roll out of bed and be wearing a business suit in the Zoom meeting because it's an avatar. And what if it's so realistic no one could even tell the difference?
As video conference technology advances, research into its cognitive and psychological effects will continue.
It's something that's probably been going on for a long time amongst the cohort of people who spend a lot of time in virtual meetings. But because we didn't have a pandemic drawing everyone into this medium of communication, we weren't studying it.
My hope is that with studying the various aspects of remote living and video conferencing, we can identify aspects of it that are positive and beneficial, and then aspects of it that may not be, so that we can adapt and make sure that we find a healthy balance going forward.